Welcome to Azalea's Kitchen. Today I'll be showing you how to make Molotof, and Molotof is a Portuguese meringue. Now what's Molotof really? So Molotof is a meringue with a texture, is a soft sort of, how can I describe it, marshmallowy kind of texture. So if I put the spoon through there, it should come away and be nice and white and soft and basically melt in your mouth. Molotof has caramel all over it, so the caramel is baked with the meringue and it goes on the bottom of the tin. And for that reason I would use a tin that doesn't have a loose bottom, so one like this, a loaf tin like that, or often in Portugal we use cake tins. And now cake tins in Portugal are like this, they're bundt tins but they're plain on the sides. I can't get those tins here, so this is the nearest I can get. So either of these tins, and you can see obviously the shape it creates, is absolutely fine. And I'll be starting with the caramel. Check out my video in detail on how to make caramels, so I'll put the link below. But this is straightforward caramel. So you put the sugar in, and then 2 tablespoons of water. Now, just as you start to make the caramel and before the sugar starts to boil, you can make sure that the sugar is covered in the water. And once the sugar is covered in the water, leave it alone, don't touch it. Otherwise you'll get a cloudy caramel. So now it's just going to come up to boil, and then boil it to the stage I want it, which is a light caramel. Now the caramel is coming up to boil, and you leave it alone until you see colouring around the edges. Usually it's one side that it will start to colour first. At that point you can swirl it around to mix it, but leave it alone for now. You can see just around this edge here, that's where it's starting to go first, and there's a very light blonde colour. And it's beginning to give off a smell of caramel. So I'm going to take it off the stove now, and I'm going to swirl it around. There's still heat in the pan, so it will carry on cooking. There we are, and that's about ready for what I want for this pudding. Okay, and now straight into the tin. Now onto the meringue, and it's a straightforward recipe. It's on the basis of a French meringue. I have already made a French meringue video, so have a look at that for lots of details on it. Now for this meringue, it's straightforward. It's 2 tablespoons of caster sugar, which is super fine sugar, to 1 egg white. Okay, so here I have 8 egg whites. And now if you want to cut down on the sugar, my mother makes it with 1 tablespoon of sugar per egg white. If you want to cut down like she does, and I have done it as well, then use granulated sugar. It makes a better meringue in this recipe when you're using a small amount of sugar like that. I've discovered that the volume of the meringue is better when you use a small amount using granulated sugar. So I hope that's sort of cleared things up. I will put this note on the recipe, so if you don't catch it on the video, go back to the recipe and I'll make a note of all of this stuff that I've put here. So we have in the bowl 8 egg whites, and basically I'm going to whisk on a slow speed until they're the soft peak stage. If you don't know what that is, have a look at the French meringue video and it will show it to you. Now it's at the soft peak stage. I'm going to add a little bit of sugar at a time and keep whisking. it's ready. So the meringue is now ready, and as you can see it's nice and soft and pillowy, which it should be, and it's a simple matter of emptying this bowl into the prepared tin with the caramel on the bottom, and you want to push the meringue into the tin as much as you possibly can. It will still sometimes have little gaps on the edge of the meringue and in the middle, and you can't help that, that's absolutely fine. But as you're putting it in, just press it down so that you don't have big gaps. So now I have almost half of the tin full there of meringue, so I'm going to put the next, and I've pressed it down, I'm going to put the next layer on top. Okay, so now I have pressed it down as much as I can, and it's almost up to the rim. Ideally for this tin I would have used one more egg white. Sometimes the egg whites differ in sizes, and next time I was going to make this I would have done 9 had I known that it didn't quite come up to the rim. So when you're baking, it's one of the things I've noticed is that when the meringue only comes halfway up the tin, what happens is during baking it puffs up beautifully, but it will decrease by the time you take it out of the oven. So although puff up, it won't stay like that, like a sort of souffle, it doesn't stay. It will shrink all the way down. And it needs this amount of mass because that's where it will shrink down to. And if you have only filled halfway up, then when you turn out, you have a sort of a shallower Molotof. And if I show it to you what I did yesterday, so we have, using the same tin, so you can see what lovely height it has, the same tin as that. I had then made it much smaller, and as you can see it's standing next to these two, how the height of this one is much shallower, and that's because I only used 6 egg whites and then it came up halfway. So whatever tin you use, including the one I showed you earlier that, oops, it has to come right up to the edge of the tin. Okay, but anyway, now it's ready to go into the oven. Okay, so now I'm going to put the hot water into the roasting tin in there. And now this is really important. 10 minutes, the timer goes on. When the timer goes off after 10 minutes, switch the oven off and leave it there for an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's it, it's done. But you must only do it 10 minutes. So quickly putting the 10 minutes on, and I'll show it to you when it comes out. So the Molotof has had an hour and a half. It should take an hour and a half to 2 hours without opening the oven door. And it will have shrunk like this one has, if I can show you there. And some of it will start to pull away from the tin. So all you need to do now is help the bit that's still stuck. So if you just get a palette knife and just ease it off around the edges like so. Just from the top part here, and then you should be able to see with your fingers, if you pull it away, that it releases itself quite easily. Just be a little bit patient. and you should be able to see all the way to the bottom of it. It's free from being stuck, which you don't obviously want to get stuck when you turn over. That's it. There we go. Release it all the way around. Now, plate. Now there's a little bit of residue of caramel, sometimes quite a lot, and this happens with this pudding, it happens with a Portuguese creme caramel as well. Now I found a way of removing it when I was doing this pudding over here earlier, and what I did was I put this tin on top of a gas flame. So please don't do this if you love your tin and it might ruin the tin. I don't want to be responsible for that. But what I did earlier was put the tin on top of the naked flame, warmed up the sugar. I added a tablespoon of water, that to help it to release. I then put as much of the caramel as I could get it off into a pan, into a small pan. To that pan I added the juice of half a lemon, which is about a full tablespoon worth of lemon juice. And then just melted the caramel again into a liquid form. What the lemon juice does is stops the sugar from recrystallizing and forming a hard lump, which you don't want to do that. So the acid is necessary to do that. The presence of acid does that. And what you're producing then is inverted sugar, which is what you call syrup. So this is what I did earlier, and this is what that is, if you can see. Just pour some over here. And it's just basically the caramel turned into syrup with a bit of lemon juice, which I like because it has the acidity from the lemon, so you've got sweet and the sharpness. I find that quite pleasant. If you don't like it, obviously, don't do that. And I'm thinking that I am quite close to doing it another way, which is making caramel so it doesn't set so hard. But I'm still in experimental stages with that, so keep an eye out. I might be able to figure that out soon. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed the pudding, and I'll see you here next time at Cecilia's Kitchen.